Hello YouTube, this is Derek. I wanted to talk today a little bit about a game that I just finished this weekend. That game is The Last Story by Mistwalker Studios. This is a company that was founded by Hironobu Sakaguchi, who is the creator of Final Fantasy. This game was directed by him, and it's actually a really fantastic Japanese role-playing game, and it's very action-heavy. It's a little bit different if you're not a fan of the more strategic type of role-playing games as far as turn-based combat or anything like that. You'll probably find a lot to like in this game. Even so, if you are a gamer who likes the turn-based combat like me, you'll also find a lot to like in this game. It's really a solid title, and it's one that I've really had a lot of fun with. But having said that, there are a few things I think about the game that will be slightly divisive, and I think there are some things that certain people either will not like or they will need to at least be aware of when they go into the game. Otherwise, they may have a false impression about what the game is or what it's going to do for them. So I'm going to talk today about the things I liked about the game, the things I didn't like, and then also some of those your mileage may vary kind of issues. So first of all, the things I liked about the game, I really loved the characters and I loved the story. So with any role-playing game, those things are so vitally important. What I liked about the characters in here is that they are not your traditional, a group of kids that a lot of times the JRPGs can kind of fall into those cliches. This is a group of hardened mercenaries, people that are just, swords for hire, and they are also people who have worked together for some time and they have great rapport with each other. And you develop relationships, deeper relationships with some of those characters over the course of the game, but still, even from the beginning, you have rapport with them and you have relationships with them already. So that's really a nice kind of dynamic, and it's really a fun thing that they play with, especially with the character interactions and the banter. Even when you're just walking through a dungeon, they'll have little quips back and forth with each other, and it's really a lot of fun to see what they do with that. Also, the voice acting is outstanding. I really love the voice actors in this game, and they really bring those characters to life. The storyline is also really interesting in that there is some sort of, traditional world-saving event thing that you have to take care of, but it really feels like the majority of the game is not about that. That kind of comes in toward the end when you start understanding more about what's going on, but a lot of the game really feels like it's, about relationships, and it's about your role in society and about this war that's going on between your nation and another, and it really feels more grounded in sort of a realistic conflict situation for the majority of it, until it gets a little bit later, and then some of the things start opening up where you realize what's really going on, and it does kind of get into the world-saving issues. But still, I think if you're someone who doesn't like the traditional sort of Japanese role-playing game storylines, or you find those to be a little bit tired, you really should give this game a chance, because I think you'll like it. The other really big thing I love in this game is the combat, and the combat is a blast. I have so much fun fighting enemies, and I wish there was more of it, which is a pretty big thing to say for a role-playing game. Most of the time you feel like there's too much combat, but this one you could actually have more. The combat is all in real time, and it is a little bit different from a sort of just regular action role-playing game because there's just a little bit more strategy that goes into it, even though it still is in real time. The one thing that may throw a couple of people off in the beginning is that your default combat style is to, when you walk up to an enemy, you push your directional button or stick against that enemy, and you start auto-attacking. And that may feel a little bit weird at first. And in fact, when I first started, I switched it to the style where you actually have to push a button to attack. But honestly, once I gave the auto attack method a try, it actually works really well. And I think that is a better way to play the game because it was designed that way, and they gave you the option to do a manual attack. But I think if you have some issues with that at the beginning, keep pushing through. Eventually, it will kind of click with you, and you'll get it. And it does make things flow a lot more easily, and especially when you start adding in some of the strategic elements to it and you start being able to control the other characters in your party more directly. All of that stuff I think will work well with that auto combat system. But this is the combat system where you are jumping off of walls and you are shooting enemies with magics, and you also have a lot of interesting strategies because when one of your magic users shoots magic at somebody, it leaves a ring on the ground, and you can either leave that ring there, and if you step into it, you will, get an elemental boost to your attack, or you can choose to defuse that, which will have another effect, whether it's breaking an enemy's, defenses, boosting your defenses, there's lots of different things. So there's different ways that you can play out the different battles by deciding, do I want to leave that there as a boost, or do I want to get rid of the ring and have this other type of ability. So it's really a fun way, and each battle plays out a little bit differently. Now, as far as the things that I didn't like about the game, the one thing that is probably the biggest challenge in the game for me is the camera. Now, a lot of times that will turn me off more than anything if I can't have a camera that's working with me. And this game really isn't that bad with it. But when it's bad, it's really bad. And there are a lot of battles that take place in either narrow corridors or small rooms, and I constantly found myself fighting against that camera. Most of the battles really aren't that bad, but occasionally, boy, some of these corridors, some of these small rooms, they really make it difficult to see what you're doing. And I would get myself trapped in a corner, and these enemies are on me, and I can't even see where I am because the camera is doing something crazy to try to get myself out of there. So the battles that took place in bigger environments worked a lot better. I think part of why they do that is because the game does use a cover system, and it has some elements in the battle where I think that they want to have this kind of clutter and things around to hide behind, but it ends up just making it a little bit too claustrophobic sometimes, and just really you don't have the camera doing what you need it to do. I also found a couple of times the camera, you have control using the right stick. I played this with the classic controller. You have full camera control, but there were times it just did not respond. So I don't know if that was buggy or what, but sometimes in the heat of battle, that camera, you're pushing on that stick and it didn't do anything. So that was frustrating. Another thing that was really frustrating about the game is there are a couple of places where it will prompt you to make a choice, but you don't really have a choice, because if you pick the wrong one, it will, your character say, well, no, I don't want to do that, and then the choice pops up again. Doesn't matter how many times you select the wrong one, it's always going to take you back to the choice until you pick the one that the game wants you to pick. I just think that's ridiculous. If you want to have the character make a choice in the story, that's fine. Don't give me the illusion of an option when there really is no illusion, or there really is no option, because that just took me out of the game. I'm thinking, well, wait, what if I want to do this other thing? I just can't. Why are you wasting my time giving me the choice? And again, it kind of reminded me of those times, especially in the PlayStation 1, like Final Fantasy games, where you would have some huge cutscene, and then it would cut to go to a section where you can move, and you move your character 2 inches, and then, oh, big cutscene again. I'm like, why did we even do that? You're just doing that because you want to make it feel like I'm playing a game. You don't, instead of watching a movie, and you're worried that you're taking your cutscene too long. But I would rather you do that than just give me, some crumbs about, yeah, you don't remember, you're really playing a game. It just seems silly, and especially when you do it in the context of a choice, which is something that a lot of people really get excited about in a role-playing game. To take that choice away and to make that something that's not really there was really frustrating. So I did not like that. And another thing that I didn't care for is sometimes there are weird pacing issues. And really I guess it's not so much pacing issues, but the game is divided into these chapters. And when you finish a chapter, it's almost like a level. You, a lot of times, will get dumped back in your room at the end, and then you can go on, whether you want to go do side quests or go on to the next part of the story or whatever. Sometimes, most of the time, I should say, there will be somebody that knocks at your door, or as soon as you walk out, you'll see someone that says, oh, hey, so-and-so was looking for you, whenever you get a chance. And then you can either go off and do your side quests or do whatever you want, or you can go talk to them, and that will continue the rest of the main story. However, there are times when there's nothing like that. You will be dumped off in your room, nobody says anything, you walk out, and you're like, well, what do I do? And I don't mind having the freedom, but I would love a clue. Just give me a clue. Let me know where I need to go, because what ends up happening is, I just wander around talking to everybody in town until I find the one person that I need to talk to continue the story. So that's really frustrating, and it just seems like a kind of a lazy design choice. Where it really bothered me, though, was at the end of the game. Now, this is going to be completely spoiler-free, so don't worry, but I had gotten to the final boss of the game, and I had beaten that boss. And it was a pretty difficult battle, so I was really excited, and I'm just like, oh, thank God, I get to see the credits, I get to see the end of the game, wonderful. Well, it dumps you back somewhere, and you have no clue where you're going, what you're doing. And so I thought I had finished the last boss, but when they did that to me, I thought, well, maybe that wasn't the last boss. I'm thinking, well, gosh, storyline, that really seems like what I've been shooting for, what's going on? So then I wander around again, probably spend I don't know how long just wandering, trying to find the right person to talk to get me to the end of the game. And it was just ridiculous because it completely kills the flow. And what happened actually to me is that I went off and talked to the wrong person, or at least not the wrong person, but not the person that would take me to the end, but a person that took me on an optional side quest. And I'm thinking, I didn't realize it was a side quest at the time. I thought it was a continuation of the main story. Actually, the game bugged out on me, and it's kind of fortunate that it did, because that just felt wrong. I'm like, this feels like we're going back to some little piddly combat. Why would this be doing this right after this epic, huge battle? So when it bugged out and I had to reload a save anyway, I went to a walkthrough and I'm like, am I missing something? And I was. I realized, oh, that's an optional side quest. I have to talk to this random person here in order to prompt the final cutscene, final, end credits of the game. That's ridiculous. Why in the world would you do that at the end of the game? It's fine if you want to let me finish the game and then go back and do those side quests. That's fine. Role-playing games do that all the time. But don't just dump me somewhere with no clue. I mean, again, you could at least have said, hey, so-and-so would like to talk to you. This was just a random person I had to talk to just show me the ending of the game. The actual final cutscene, the actual credits had to be prompted by this conversation. And that, to me, made no sense, and it completely ruined the flow. I mean, here I'm having to look up a walkthrough on how to just see the credits, even after I've finished beating the game. And it really made the ending less impactful for me. If it had happened pretty much right after I'd finished, the boss, then it would have been fine, and I would have had that wonderful, moment of closure. But as it was just frustrated, and so that I didn't really end up liking or getting. I mean, I liked the ending, but I didn't. There was a part of me that was just, not as invested in it because I was frustrated. So, and again, I'm saying all these bad things. I loved the game, don't get me wrong. And there are some things that were difficult about it and some things that were not well thought out, but overall the game was a blast. Now, in the areas where your mileage may vary and where I think this game is going to be divisive, is this game is, one, it's pretty linear. And it does have side quests, it does have things that you can do, but really it's a game where you're trucking along through a story. Now that doesn't bother me in the slightest. I think linearity is just fine in a video game, and I don't think that adding an open world makes a game automatically better. I'm actually one of the few people that think Arkham Asylum is a better game than Arkham City. Because I think the linearity of Arkham Asylum actually worked and we told a more enveloping, engrossing story because of that. So this game is linear. Again, there are side quests and things you can do, but it's still one path to the end. So if that bothers you, just be aware that that's the way it is. Again, doesn't bother me, but some people have issues with that. The other thing, too, is that the game is short. It's about 20 hours, which is a fair amount of time, but it is short for a role-playing game. Those tend to be more around 40 hours. That's another thing that I actually really liked, oddly enough, because I think a lot of times big role-playing games tend to fall into the trap of they feel like they end up padding out their content to get to that 40-hour time limit because that's what's expected. But sometimes I really feel that many role-playing games would benefit by having a little bit of that content trimmed to keep the momentum going. And a lot of times people will complain that role-playing games, especially Japanese role-playing games, feel repetitive, and I think it's because of that, because they, instead of focusing on the story all the time, they'll have you do some of these repetitive tasks or have you do tasks that just, will end up going nowhere to kind of pad out the content when they could have just gone straight there. So I appreciate the fact that they had the guts to say, no, this is the story we're telling, it's going to take us 20 hours to tell it, so we don't need to fill this in with unnecessary padding to make it to hit some arbitrary hour mark in order to be a full role-playing game. So I really like that they did that. The other thing is too, it's such an action-heavy game. The combat is so intense that it doesn't feel short. I think a lot of times, I can play a game like Uncharted for 15 hours and that feels really long. But then I play Skyrim for 80, and that doesn't feel nearly as long. I think it's just because of the pacing, and with one is so much more intensely action all the time. Those hours feel longer than they actually are, and that is kind of what's happening here. It's such a great combat system and such an action-heavy game that it doesn't feel like it's a short game at all. So, but again, if you're someone who really wants to, a type of game that you can invest hundreds of hours in or something, this really isn't that. I think, though, that a lot of, anybody's going to really enjoy this game. If you're a fan of Japanese role-playing games, pick this up. It's stellar. It's a great game. if you're not a fan of Japanese role-playing games because you don't like the cliched stories or because you feel like the combat tends to be repetitive or stagnant, pick this up. This might really be one that you can enjoy. The only people that I think really might not like it are the people who the only kinds of role-playing games they like are the big sprawling open-world Western RPGs like Gothic or the Elder Scrolls, and that's all they like because of that big openness. If that's all you're really looking for in a role-playing game, this might not be it. But at the same time, I think people should give it a try, just knowing what it is going into it, because you should, you can definitely still enjoy it because it is a fantastic game. So, so that's it for me with the last story. Those are my thoughts on it. If you have any additional thoughts that you'd like to share, please put it in the comments. I really appreciate you guys listening to me ramble on about the games, and if there's any other games that you'd like me to talk about, old or new, please let me know. Thanks so much.